Then we can try to generate good intention by thinking, may us coming here together with the good intentions and giving our precious time to listen to the talk, to reflect and think about the talk, and contemplating and engage in discussions. May all of this become cause, condition, and inspirations to cultivate and develop compassions to not only those who are nice to us, but also to those who are not so nice to us as well, to everyone. May it be cause and condition to cultivate the bodhicitta mind and wisdom realizing emptiness. And through the help of those two wings of the method and wisdom, may we be able to achieve fully enlightened state for the benefit of all sentient beings. Okay. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly by my practice of giving other perfections. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May all sentient beings have happiness and causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and causes of the suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Referring I prostrate with my body, speech, and mind, I present cloud with every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginningless time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. This remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits and those of all others to the great enlightenment. This ground I noted perfume stone flowers adorned with Mount Meru for continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it. May all living beings enjoy this purely. Idam Guru Rana Mandala Niyataya. So again, thank you very much for today, for joining. And today's topics, as you all are aware, is on developing and cultivating compassion to those whom we disagree, or for those who disagree with us, So it's two ways of seeing, Either we disagree with them or them disagreeing with us. It's just that attitude can have a different effect, Am I disagreeing with them or them are disagree with me? Do you see how it can have a different reactions or different feelings? The moment we feel I'm disagreeing with them, it feels like I'm the one. When we say, they are disagreeing with me, it feels like they are the one. And so anyway, however but it is interesting, it's just kind of the shift in that can have a different, slightly different kind of our emotional, mental response to that, whether we are disagreeing or they are disagreeing with me. Anyway, so it's not easy. It's not natural and easy to feel and cultivate love and compassion to those with whom we disagree, to those with whom we have conflict, to those which we feel, whether they are or not from our side, which we feel they are unkind, uncompassionate, uncaring, which we feel they are not understanding, not patient, and so forth. It definitely is more challenging to feel compassion towards them. It doesn't come easily and naturally. And on the other hand, if someone has been close to us, dear to us, if someone has been kind to us, compassionate to us, loving and caring to us, and you will have that kind of strong connections, then of course it's much more easy to cultivate or feel love, compassion towards them, Not only we, even the animals can feel compassion for them, to a certain degree. You see, animals, parents, love and compassion of their children, how much they take care of them. Some of them, they even sacrifice their well-being, sometimes even their own life to protect, to save their children. Not only their children, sometimes you see animals, they protect and try to protect and save. Even if it's not their children, their species, if it is their species, and if one of their species is being attacked, when they are in herds of elephants or herds of different animals, buffalo, whatever, when they have been attacked, even though it's not their children, they all try to protect them, the young ones, risking their own life, the adult, trying to protect them, trying to save them. That shows certain level of, love and compassion, and to kind of protecting, so we can see that even within the animal realms, and so that kind of compassion and love, come from more from, biological, from more emotional point of view, it is not necessarily coming from point of view of you know, practice that is based on understanding. Practice that is based on understanding, you know. That comes through practice that is based on certain understanding, that is based on certain wisdom, certain understanding, you know. Um, so as a practitioner, you know, when you are trying to develop not that kind of just that kind of emotional compassion and love, you know, we are trying to develop much more than that kind of emotional, you know, love and compassion that doesn't, there's not rooted in understanding, there's no rooted in wisdom. Such love and compassion is kind of, you know, one is very unstable, you know, it's very partial, you know, it's very conditional, you know, and that kind of love, compassions, you know, can change or disappear very easily, depending on others' reaction, response, attitude, behavior, you know. You know, I feel compassion and love because they are being nice to me. The moment I feel they are not nice to me, my love and compassion will start to become kind of shaky, you know. And then, you know, once we feel they are, you know, not only not not nice and kind anymore, but maybe they are even becoming a little bit rude, disrespectful, and mean, then, you know, our compassion, love slowly transform into disappointment, feeling of, you know, betray, feeling of anger, hatred, you know, so that it, it's so easy to transform from being love and compassion to anger and hatred. And because their behavior, their attitudes, their action toward us change. That kind of love and compassion is that is why is more emotional and is not really stable, because that is not developed through practice. That is based on wisdom and compassion. And that kind of love and compassion, I already said, even the animal can express that, even though we see in them, you know. So when we talk about cultivating love and compassion through practice, that is rooted in some understanding, some wisdom, you know. Then, you know, then we have to feel compassion to even those who disagree. When you are able to feel love and compassion for even those whom we disagree, even with whom, you know, we might have different views and disagreements or even conflict, you know. If we can feel love and compassion even for those, then, you know, that kind of love, compassion will be much more, you know, stronger, stable, reliable, you know. And that is where we are trying to cultivate that kind of love and compassion, you know. So I think, first of all, maybe we have to kind of differentiate when we talk, trying to cultivate or develop compassion. What kind of compassions that we are trying to develop? Are we trying to develop that kind of emotional, unstable compassion, or are we trying to cultivate the compassion that is based on understanding and wisdom, and which is stable, you know. And so I think that is that we have to be more clear about that. Again, as I mentioned at the very beginning, it's not easy for us without having practiced enough, you know, without having put so much practice and effort in our practice to really feel compassion for those with whom we disagree, you know. It's not easy. It's going to be difficult. But, you know, what are the options? What are the options? You know, either we can be frustrated, angry, upset with them, or we can be more understanding, more patience, and more compassion. There are those two options, you know. And it's about which options is better. We have these two options. Which is better? Which is more helpful? Which is more beneficial for ourselves, for our family, for our friends, for the society, for the place, the world we live in? Which is better, you know? So that is the choice we have to make, you know? Being frustrated, angry, and upset, you know, because of our disagreement, because of their certain attitude, because of their certain behavior, because of their certain actions. If we allow ourselves to be upset and angry, you know, what kind of effect it is having to us? Does it have a positive effect, or does it have a negative effect to us, you know, physically, emotionally, mentally, worldly, spiritually, you know? And yet, not only us, you know, when I'm upset, when we are upset and angry, you know, frustrated, you know, not only it affects us, that energy is felt by people around us, and they feel also uncomfortable. You know, they also feel that kind of negative energy that also disturb their mind, you know, their well-beings, you know, and that kind of energy spreads, you know, from one person to many persons surrounding them, and that spread in the society, in the world, you know. If we see, you know, what is happening in these countries or all over the world, you know, it starts with certain individuals, few peoples who are upset and angry, frustrated, and they bring that energy and they express that energy and they bring out, and then that energy is like kind of being catching on fire towards others, you know, spreads. And so that is how it becomes. You know, on the other hand, you know, if we choose, you know, if we choose, make an effort, and thereby choose to not to give up ourselves to that kind of frustration, anger, and hatred. Instead, you know, we focus ourselves to train our mind to be more understanding, more patient, more kind, more compassionate. Then, you know, it helps ourselves to keep more calm, more undisturbed, more peaceful, that helps emotionally, mentally, for our mental well-being, emotional well-being, and that will also affect on our physical well-being as well. And also it affects people around us. Even someone is frustrated and angry, when they see you very calm and peaceful, that has a positive impact on them, make them feel more peaceful and calm. And we see not only human beings, even with animals, they sense that. Do you get it? Dogs and animals can sense the human beings' feelings. When the human beings more peace and calm, they start to become more calm and peace. When the person is becoming kind of fearful or agitated, they feel that and they also start to respond in that way, They also become kind of disturbed and agitated, And that is the effect. That is the effect that we can bring not only ourselves, but our surrounding, And that effect is felt by other people. And then again, it can be also spread, just as hatred is spread like fire. Also the love and compassion can be also spread like that, equally as well, And so therefore, contemplating, those are the two choices. And if we decided to follow one, what kind of consequences and different effect that could have on individual level and on bigger level, as a society, as itself, Sometimes we might think, whether I'm upset or frustrated or not, it affects me, not others, but it affects so many others, so many others, by our that kind of feelings and emotions, And that is the same with when you feel very much love and compassion, the positive impact, the positive influence towards others as well. So that is, so therefore, when we reflect and contemplate in that way, then, as difficult as it is, we have no better options than, trying to follow compassion, understanding, patience, and compassion, That is the best options for everyone. Our own well-being, well, the being of the others, the well-being of the society, the world, that is and so we cannot give up because it's difficult, We cannot give up because it's difficult, because, giving up is not the best options, Because when you give up, then it leads to frustration, upset, and anger, and that is not the best options, So as difficult as it is, we have to kind of, push ourselves to continue to practice, continue to live our life more with that. So how can we do that? It's it's not easy. It's not easy, doing that it's not easy, and for me, first of all, before we can even have compassion, that is a big, having a compassion to someone, not only we disagree, but someone to us who seems very unkind, mean, cruel, and hurtful and harmful, it's much more difficult to feel compassion for them, So before even we have compassion for I think the first step is not to be so upset and angry and have hateful feelings. That is the first step. Even we don't have compassion to them, at least we don't have hatred, anger, ill will feeling, harsh feeling, negative feelings. If we can do that, that is the first step. That is the first step. And that is also in, Shantideva's Guides the Bosso Way of Life. He explained the patience in the part 8. And then Bodhicitta, the compassion, in part 9. So patience being a kind of the foundations. You have when you have that patience, then that acts as a foundation to go further than that and then feel compassion. Because when you have anger and hatred and ill will feeling and harsh feeling, you cannot have compassion. Those two mind are contradictory mind. And so when you have one of those mind, the other mind cannot manifest. So therefore, the first is not to have those negative ill will feeling, those feelings. And then once you don't have that, then we try to practice to go even further. That are not only now we are not only upset, angry, and have harsh feeling, ill will feeling, but now we even go further and then even feel love and compassion. So, so the first step is, I think, important step is that, so, and to do that, then, understanding why they behave that way, why they have that kind of attitude, why they have that kind of view, why they act that way, understanding that is big, important factors, to not be so upset and angry with them, Because a lot of time we don't really understand. A lot of time we don't understand why that person have that kind of view, why they behave that way, why they think that way, why they do that way. We just generalize and make up our own stories, but we don't really understand where they come from, where they are coming from. If we really understand that, then we might feel, not so upset, angry. We might not agree with their view. We might not agree with their attitude. We might not agree with their behavior, but we might feel for them why they are doing that, why they are that way. I find extremely helpful, people who have, different political views, the other side of political views, other sides of the different views in terms of nowadays, anti-vaccines, or whether you call anti or what, but who are not willing to take the vaccines, or some people who refuse to wear the mask, all of that, and if you really talk with them, some of them, you can see why they choose, I might not agree with that, but I can see that they also have certain point and where they are coming from, So then, it helped me not to kind of, just, oh, you are, uncaring, unloving, unconcerned with others, too selfish, because a lot of them have so many different views from different, in these countries, a lot of many numbers of, Africans, Americans have not taken the vaccines. And because there's a history around that, how they have been experimented in the past. So they don't trust, there's a deficit of trust. So there's hesitation for that. There's a huge number of people like that, So I can see that if me or my ancestors has been kind of, mistreated, for experimenting without them knowing, without their permission, without knowing them, experimenting, taking advantage of them, then of course there's always going to be strong distrust. And there's always going to be some hesitations in that, So there are many people who come from that kind of, among them who are that, many who come from that kind of histories, Then there are some others, who has, difficult trusting the government, authority. And some people who have a problem with trusting, those big corporations, especially pharmacies who are producing those things, So it's lack of trust, confidence, nothing more than that. For many of them, is lack of trust and confidence in that. Lack of trust, confidence in informations, lack of trust and confidence in the government, lack of trust and confidence in those big corporations, and especially also a lot of those, drug pharmacies, which has developed these things. And so there is a lot of that too, a lot of that too, So there's a lot of baggage that, that come through, a lot of past, from the past, that sunk into a lot of people's, what you call in subconscious level or whatever, there is that part too, I was, I have been discussing that kind of, many, friends, I have friends who are politically on the other side, also when it comes to this, vaccines and that, also on the other side, and they are not politically from other side. Some of them, politically they are, democratic, but at the same time, they have certain reservations. They have certain reservations about the vaccines and all of that. They have their own different views, different ideas of that. And even recently, I was talking with one of my friends, or actually he was actually my student in the monastery at one time, and he disrobed, and he went to Europe, he's in kind of Switzerland, and he has a wife from in Tibetan refugee from India, and she's very educated, and her families and her sisters is nurse and all of that, and she has some health issues, but she hasn't taken the vaccine, and she has also kind of encouraged her husband not to take it, and so they haven't taken so far. Of course, I wouldn't agree with that, but we have a talk, and she has point, and same. She is same thing. She's not anti-vaccine, but she doesn't trust. She wanted to take it time, to see how things goes. And more as things goes, she's becoming more and more suspicious, more and more doubt. And it's not, she's suspecting the science itself of that, but it's just, interesting, yeah. Then she was making point, well, people who are vaccinated also are um, getting sick, so it is not really kind of stopping it. And then she was saying now, before they say 2 shot, now they are saying 3rd shot. Now after they say 4th shot, booster never ending. So that makes her even more more doubt, suspicious, because it seems like it's a business. It feels like, whether you agree or not, but there's a point in her, that to be more doubt and suspicious. Now it is saying, and now it might be, you might have to take the booster every 5 months, every 6 months, all of that. So all these kind of things create, because there are a lot of people who are just waiting to see how it goes. And then when those information comes, they start to become more suspicious and all of that, And I can see why they are suspicious, why they are suspicious, So, so many different point of view that people come to come to their decisions. Whatever decision they come to, it's not as simple as that, as we make out so easily and generalize everything in one, A lot of them, many of them, their thinking, their view, their behavior, their action is very much molded, created by their environments, their upbringings, their surroundings, friends, families, or what kind of state you live in, what kind of town you live in. A lot of those influence. What kind of information you rely on, what kind of information or disinformation you rely on, whether it is us, whether it's them, nobody really, because we don't know. Sometimes we might be reading a disinformation and we believe it's a true information, and they are doing the same thing, many of them, they think that is true information when it's so that is what, conditions create the people, the way they think, the way they behave, and that, and circumstances, in some cases their upbringing, in some cases their upbringings, so all of that, and especially nowadays in the modern world with this social media, even I get so confused when you read what to trust, what not to trust, informations, there's all kind of informations on every issue, and you can only read, you can't read everything, okay? No time to read everything. And so you just have to be selective and hope what you are selecting, the reading, is the truth. And so we base on certain informations, and we trust on those selected informations, because nobody has all the time to read everything and then at the end make your own things. And some of those subjects are not our expertise, complicating when it comes to, in my case, medicine, no ideas, And so even I read everything, still probably I wouldn't understand everything. So then, I just kind of have to trust in certain information, select it and So that is reality for me, That's the truth for me now. Those based on those selective information that I rely on. And it is not because from my side, I want to be informed the truth. I don't want to be informed the misinformation, but which I think that is the reliable sources. Is that really truth or not? I don't know. I always can, and so that a lot of people get in that kind of things. A lot of people are kind of misled, you can say, by those different misinformations, and that become their reality. And so, and they don't choose to actually to be in that side, but is that how you end up becoming like that? For example, even just take an example, the Chinese population in Tibet, they rely on whatever information they are provided, have the access. From that, they have a very different understanding of Tibet issue and His Holiness Dalai Lama than we have. They have, they have totally different feeling, different understanding of the Tibet issues and His Holiness Dalai Lama than ourselves, because their feelings, their view, their idea were formed by whatever information they were given, whatever information they were relying on, and that's who they become. They didn't choose to be in that. It's just you are surrounded by that kind of information, and you just read it, you just see it, and then that slowly, that is what it becomes, And so you can only feel compassion for them, to have a wrong view about the Dalai Lama, for example, His Holiness Dalai Lama, And you can only feel compassion for them because, they have no other options. And so that is what they were informed, and that is how they grow up. That is all the information they had. And for them, that is the fact, that is the reality. For them, that is the fact, and that is the reality. And many of them, even when they come out of China, in the West, even they have all other informations, it's extremely difficult for them to change their perceptions, to change their perceptions, because it has been built over 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. And to kind of think that, those 20 years, 30 years, everything that I'm thinking was wrong, that I was mistaken, it's very difficult. And so even you have all other information, you can't trust them. Do you get it, what I mean? And that is same with a lot of people, even with all these new things that is happening, even though there are many different other information, they don't trust that information, Just to give you an example, it's interesting, how we become very biased, from all the sides, It's not just one side, it's all the side. And sometimes we feel we are not biased, but we are being biased, I can see that myself, When I first came to this country, I was in Taos, I had at that time I had a TV, now I don't have TV, but at that time I had TV and I was watching quite often, and I used to watch all kind of, Fox, CNN, all MBS, all of them, and I was less biased at that time. I was watching all of them and interesting, how they're different views, from different sources, But with the time, then I become a little biased, and now I stop watching Fox, and have a little difficulty watching them and to really listen everything. But then I realize I'm being biased. Now my source of information is only one side, you know. The best would be if I get both information, and then finally I make my own decisions, I listen to those who disagree, who have different information or disinformation, whatever you call it, their point of view, different point of view. You listen to both point of view, then finally we make our own decisions. But we can't do that. We are unable to do that because we don't have any more patience to listen to the other views. And we don't want to waste time to listen to other views. Do you get it what I mean? And in that way, we are also being kind of, what do you call, form our thinkings and our informations, our reality, by being very selective about what we listen to, what we read. Some people's, truth or reality is based on what New York Times says. Some of people's truth and reality is based on, what CNN, MBB, ABC, or so on, or BBC's, whatever, Fox, all those different medias, source of informations, and that's how we end up. So when you understand that, you can see, we might not agree with their view, but we can see where they're coming from. And we can only just, rejoice that we have in a better conditions or better circumstances that we are not being influenced by such. Otherwise, we could be just like them. We could just end up like them, being based on where you are and what kind of surrounding informations that you have access to, all of that. Definitely, for me, definitely it helped to see that, if I was born in China, I would have totally opposite of how I feel and my reality towards the Tibet issue, towards His Holiness Dalai Lama. And I say, I'm so lucky and fortunate that I was not born in a Tibet. I mean, in a China, created by the circumstances, and so therefore, and that's same, that is similar, you are born in a red state, very strong red state, with all people have similar, rely on specific kind of informations and surrounding. We just become like them. That is what you have, the environment access, and so, and that would be same with other way around too, so I think, understanding where they are coming from is so important. So important. Just like when we understand, like someone who might be violent, and they are violent because when they are growing up, when they are upbringing, they grow in a very violent environment. They were treated very violently, So if you understand their history, where it is coming from, you can feel compassion for them, because that is what made them to become violent, because of their, when they were young, how they were treated and kind of circumstances they grow up, and in all kind of this have strong impact as they grow up to become who they are, So and it is a huge difference, I think, when we understand their background, when we understand someone's background, and the background that made them who they are, or what they are, and their behavior, action, and views, then as much as we don't agree with them, at the same time, we can understand and feel why they think that way, why they have that view. And also, sometimes it's not that they don't have certain points. Sometimes they have certain points. We have our own point, and they have their points. And their point have also some reasons. It's not like their point has nothing to hold on. So I think understanding all of that can help us to be less angry, less upset, less harsh feeling towards them. And that will create better mental state and openness to feel compassion for them as well. Not only we don't be upset and have hatred, anger, and harsh feeling, but also we can feel certain level of compassion to them. So I think, personally, I think I find that helpful. And, just trying to understand why they think that way, why they act that way, why they behave that way, It's interesting, I saw some, interviews, with certain from some of them, even from medical, doctors, scientists, of course, those are very few people from that from the doctors, medical and science, as well as, more common people as well, Of course, from our point of view, we blame them for this situation to never-ending situations, That is how we feel, because of certain number of them who refuse to do that it keep on spreading and it keep on coming, So that is how we feel. From their point of view, it is the we who got vaccinated that's allowing that to happen, Because of that, it is unable to spread everywhere, and so therefore we cannot get a what you call immunity. What immunity? What was that?
Herd immunity.
Herd immunity. So if we allow that the nature to take it, it will have kind of spread it, and we will all have that, and we will not be experiencing that. Of course, whether that's true or not, but to some degree, they have certain point, in a way, because this is interesting, what their way of thinking. And so from those point of view, from those people, they truly, it is not like they truly believe that was the case. They truly believe, we are the one who is postponing or from, and it's interesting, it's just never thought about that, but that when I saw that, it was kind of, it started me to think, anyway, so it is an interesting, just I don't remember who. I had one friend, who shared, his grandfather used to say to him, there's always three reality: your reality, other person's reality, and there's reality which neither of them. His grandfather used to say to him, there's always three reality: your reality and the other person's reality, and there's another reality where there's neither other person's reality, your not reality. And I thought that was quite wise advice, in a way. It's true, it can be possibly like that, it can be possibly, I think this is reality, the other person thinks this is reality, and it what I think might be truth, or the other person might be true, or it might be neither of ours truth and there is something else, but we become very very attached to our view, thinking that is the reality, and strong grasping to that, and thereby completely negating if it is something against that view. And therefore, then anyone who have that view becomes something we have problem with, something we have difficulty with something we feel conflict, and with with someone we have disagreement, and that lead to that, and again, just to have this open-minded, just to have that open-minded, the possibility of the other person's view might be the reality, or there is a possibility of both of us could be wrong and there might be different reality. That's just to be that kind of open-minded can also help us to be less, less narrow and less, what do you call, holding too tightly, in our views, thinking that's the reality, and therefore anything that is not similar to that or against that, then we feel, and then we have the problem with that. So just to be able to keep that open-minded also can be very beneficial and helpful. Not to come to that so, permanent kind of conclusions, thinking this is the only truth, this is the only one, and no other possibility, because throughout the history, so many has been in certain time when they thought that was the reality. After many centuries, they found that was not the reality, isn't it? Many history are being rewritten in many countries, in many things, because something that thought that was the what fact and really that happened, that later they found out that wasn't the case. But at that time, people believed that was what happened. That was the reality. That has happened throughout the history, continue to happen. That also happened to our own personal lives. There are things at a certain time we believed that was the fact. Later we found out that was not the fact. That we didn't have the full information at that time, or that we were not informed, or we didn't got the right information, all of that. And we find many times in our life, at certain time we feel that is the correct, that is the fact, that is the reality. Later we found out we're mistaken. We're mistaken. We have that experience. So therefore, every moment, even though we feel that, it could be one of those moments, who knows? So just to keep that open mind, the possibility I could be wrong, the possibility, that might not be the real reality, and it could be something else. Just that openness can be sometimes helpful to not be too hold things too tightly, and become not having the flexibility, and because of that, then we don't want to hear others' different views. We don't want to hear others' different views, and even we try to listen to others' different view, our mind is already closed. Our always mind thinks, oh, he's talking garbage. Your ears there in your mind, you are always saying, oh, he's ignorance, or his information, he's misled, or he or she is being misinformed, or he or she's. So you see that our mind is not fully open because we have already made the decisions or made all the conclusions before even we listen fully to what others' different views, So, I think that kind of understanding, listening to each other's, we don't have to argue, I don't argue with others, whether it's a political view, whether it's in view of all what is happening now, those who have different view on vaccines and all of that, I just listen and just try to understand where they come from, why they come from. I don't try to say, you are wrong, you have been misinformed, this and that, because I don't know myself. I definitely rely on certain informations which I believe and think that is correct for me. But, so therefore, just because we have different view, different approach, that doesn't mean our friendship have to end. That doesn't mean we have to have a bad feeling to each others. That doesn't mean we have to argue where they might not be, they might not be able to change my view, where I might not be able to change their view, and so, but the thing is just listening, open-minded, and just understanding where they are coming from, and I think, I guess that is kind of to every situation, everything that we disagree in any kind of issues, any kind of, whether it's a spiritual, whether it's politics, whether it's anything, economics, situation or climate, between those who think the climate crisis, or those who feel there is no climate crisis, it's just natural, Again, we all have different views, our own different views, and and I think that is, for me, that is the important factor: listening with open mind, and understanding where they come from. We don't have to agree with that. Neither we have to argue with them. There's no point of arguing. Most time we will not be able to convince each other. So the only thing is we listen with open-minded and just try to understand each other, where each of us are coming from, our point of view, and that can be helpful, not to have any kind of wrong and bad feeling, and that will allow us to feel compassion for them as well. Another things that we can think and reflect, is someone has certain view, different view than ourselves, different attitude, different behavior, actions, understanding of things, all of that, this all depends on many factors, many factors. For all of us, many factors. Our karmic factors, from karmic imprint, there's that factors, karmic factors for the way our life, our perceptions, our views, our attitude, how it turns out. There's karmic factors as well, Then immediately, as I mentioned at the very beginning, your upbringing, your environment, your surroundings, your information, all of that has another factors. So when we look from all these different factors, then we can only feel compassion for them, because people end up becoming who they are, not necessarily because they want to be that, but because of all these factors. Just as someone who want to be very compassionate, but because of so many factors, they end up becoming violent persons. Their intentions is to become a compassionate person. They have their strong desire. Not only they have a strong desire, and they want to be a kind and compassionate person, they even put effort. Despite all of that, sometimes people just, despite all of that, sometimes people, are unable to become kind and compassionate. They end up becoming very violent and unkind persons. If it is what they is, if it is, what they want to be, they will never become like that. But what made them become that is many conditions which they have no control over, to which they have no control over. So then when we understand that, then again, we can feel, compassion for them, compassion for them. They end up becoming who they didn't want to end up, They become which they didn't want to become. They end up becoming something they didn't want to become. Isn't that so painful? Isn't that so painful? How much emotional, mentally someone might be going through when you become something you didn't want to become. So again, through that kind of understanding also can help us to have not so much, harsh feelings, but instead, to feel even a little bit of compassion toward them, Um, then another, uh, factors that can help us to feel compassion, is, no matter how mean, unkind, cruel that person might looks or feel, that how we might feel, but I think if we go deeper and try to understand their pain, their sufferings, if you go, if you go and try to really feel and understand and feel their pain and their suffering, again, as long as we don't, well, as long as we have certain kind of reservations, aversions, and dislike for being unkind, mean, and cruel, at the same time, you can feel for that person's, because you feel their pain and suffering. Because you feel their pain and suffering. Because it's quite natural for any sentient beings, especially human beings, to feel compassion when someone really feels someone's pain and suffering. Whoever that person, whoever that sentient might be. The problem with us is when we have disagreement and when we have conflict with someone, when we have disagreement, conflict, different views, so that creates kind of the gap, wall. And with that kind of gap, that kind of wall, it doesn't allow us to feel their pain. We can't see their pain, their suffering, and we can't really feel their pain and sufferings. And when we can't feel their pain and suffering, and then we're unable to feel their pain and suffering, and then we have all these different views, how bad and all this and this, that, and then, then that is where, instead of compassion, then we feel anger, hatred, and harsh feeling, ill will feelings, So I can, really, because of course, if we are close, it's easy for us to see their problem, their suffering, their pain, and feel it. But like someone who don't know very well, or which is distant, sometimes it might be very hard for us to really see their pain and suffering. But even though we don't know them personally, closely, but we can kind of generalize in general, just like ourselves. They all are just a human being in samsara, so therefore they are going just same like us. Sometimes even we try to show the image of, even when we are going through a lot of struggles, a lot of pain, a lot of suffering, we don't want to show to the general public. We might be able to express and show to some of our close friends whom you trust, but outside you present yourself as okay, in a good state, So other people never know that you have a problem, you have pain and suffering, And I've seen so many people like that, People I've knew for some of them 20 years, 15 years. I didn't know how much pain and suffering they were going through. Because whenever I see them, they seems, they always seem to present, okay, they have a good, they have a, good job, financially they seems to do well. And whenever you see they seem friendly with others and talkings and seems all of that. But, then, one time, someone came to see me, and because, again, they have been going to, and that person said, they have been dealing with that depression for more than 40 years. And so many times of thought of taking their lives. So many times. And started crying and uncontrollable, all of that, And I was shocked. Because it was never kind of outside. Before that, it was never kind of, because everyone's hiding their pain and suffering. They don't want to show up. We always try to hide our pain and suffering. But even though you are going through so much pain and suffering, you wouldn't know, and, so that is just experience, with some, but I know there are a lot of them who are similar that, which we feel they don't have, their life seems to be doing well. They don't have such a big problem, such a big struggles. But what is going inside them, you have no idea. You have no idea what might be going through their mind so much, And so same thing, a lot of those whom we have, conflict, dislike, sometimes it feel like, oh, they have no pain, they have no suffering, they are enjoying their life. But, really, we never know. And that is where, if you can feel their pain and suffering, then that is where the difference becomes. When you really see and feel that, then you can't stop but really feel some level of compassion. And the ability to see and feel that is the key, and so doing that kind of meditation practice, trying to really see, especially from, even though we can't see from outside, but because we are samsara, because still their life is still, in samsara, still kind of under the influence and controlled by the delusion and karma, therefore they are, just like our slave, just like ourselves, they are slave and prisoner of their own karma and delusion. That itself is a painful. That itself is a painful. So through that kind of meditation, contemplations, maybe we might be able to open our heart a little bit, feel their pain, and then feel compassion. And also, trying to see another way of seeing them to cultivate compassion is, again, to practice meditations, seeing the Buddha nature, how each and every one has Buddha nature. So by nature, everyone is autistic. They have this incredible potential. Even the worst person, even the most mean person, even the most cruel person, even the most ignorant persons, even the most unkind, ununderstanding person, even that person has the most biggest potential to become most kind in the world, most compassionate person in the world, the most understanding and forgiving person in the world, most nice persons, that person, that full potential is only matter of meeting the right conditions to get in touch with that potential. It's only matter have, it's only matter of coming into contact with the right conditions, right conditions. And throughout the histories, there's so many beings like that. During the Buddha time, there were so many beings like that. Angulamala was one of them, killed 999 people, fears, everyone was scared in that village, in that places of him, No one dared to go the certain path, road where he was known to be living in that kind of forest. That's such a fearful in that. But since he had that potential, and when he met the right condition, when he met the Buddha, right condition came together. When he met the Buddha, that started to change. From being such a fearful, such a murderous, such a person to become more compassionate, more kind, more forgiving persons. Later, after that, he followed the Buddhas and disciples. He became a monk, and later when they were going, because the monks have to go to the village for beg, and he had to go to some of the village that from here where he came from, and people recognize him from Angulimala from past. And of course, a lot of people have lost their families, friends, and that they're also upset and angry, and they beat him, they throw stones, he was almost, killed him, almost killed him to the death. At that time, because of his practice and that, he has no hard feeling for them. He has no hard feeling them. He understood them. He forgave them. He feel compassion. He never have bitter feelings, bitterness, bad feeling. Such is person that has transformed in like that. And there are so many individuals like that during the Buddha's time where, transform that when the persons meet the right conditions, because they have that potential, And in India, for example, later, much later, Ashoka, the King Ashoka, who is supposed to be unified, the India now is, or most of them, he was very powerful empire, and he conquered so many countries, at that time, smaller countries, and that make the big India now, and he was ruthless. He was a ruthless king, and in the war, in order to capture other countries, he was ruthless and killed so many of them, so many. But later, certain cause condition comes that kind of directed his mind towards the Dharma, embraced the Dharma, practiced the Dharma. Then he became the one of the greatest promoter of the non-violent and peace. He gave up his own, as a king, and he lived as a, promoting the peace, kindness, compassion. And through him, that is where a lot of the teaching spread into the Sri Lanka and many other places. He was the instrumental in doing that, in Nepal and many other places. And so again, from very ruthless person to that, because he had that potential. Before he didn't meet the right conditions. Later, certain circumstances and that condition came together, and then he was able to shift from becoming kind of opposite persons, to such. And because that is, and so to recognize that no matter how mean the person seems to us now, they all have that potential. Only all the right conditions could come to them. And so again, when we are able to feel that, then again, it will be more easy for us to feel compassion instead of seeing them 100% negative, totally negative. There's no goodness in them, That's how we feel sometimes, There's nothing goodness in that person for me to feel compassion for them. Do you get it? Sometimes that is how we feel, We struggle to feel compassion because we can't see any goodness in that person. and to really see that, there's such a goodness in that, and then even from science, from many of the research, they also find, human beings by nature is altruistic. All the human beings by nature is altruistic. They don't talk about Buddha nature, but definitely through research they have found the human beings, at least that is what they did with research with the human beings. With the human beings by nature were altruistic. But if we are so altruistic by nature, how people end up becoming, mean and unkind and cruel and all that, because of certain conditions. We didn't make the right conditions to work with that altruistic mind and the compassion seed. But then we've started to become less and less touched with that, our basic nature, because of many other circumstances and conditions. So, but basically there is a goodness, the altruistic. And so again, understanding that, in every sentient beings can be helpful and beneficial to see something positive in them, and thereby opening ourselves to feel compassion for them. So, those are some of the kind of some few different way that we might be able to, different way of contemplating, thinking, so that we can let go of having any kind of anger, hateful, ill will feeling, instead to be able to help us to feel a little bit more compassion, even for those we disagree, even with those who seems unkind, mean, cruel, So I think that is all. So if there's questions, I can take one or two questions if there's questions, or if there's any questions, comments, sharing.
Thanks, Geshe. I really needed to hear a lot of those things. I especially liked just that last piece about conditions. I mean, I think that's just really difficult it's been difficult for me to see that goodness, and I guess I've been thinking to myself, I know they have Buddha nature, but I haven't really been trying to move rationally as to what that means. I've just been trying to kind of jump to that conclusion. So I felt like that teaching really kind of helped like see how to make yourself think that way, I guess.
Okay. Thank you for that. Any questions? If not, then we can do the dedications.
And if anyone has anything lingering, we can always ask Geshe in the morning. So if you think of something.
Yeah. Due to the merits of this virtuous action, may I quickly attain the state of Guru Buddha and lead all living beings without exception into that enlightened state. May the supreme jewel Bodhisattva that is not arise and grow, and may that which is arise and not diminish, but increase more and more. The wish granting, wish fulfilling source of every single benefit, happiness in this world, to incomparably kind things in just I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. You who uphold the subdued moral way, who serve as a bountiful barrier of sustaining, preserving, spreading man's not victory, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayer, honoring the three jewels, Savior, myself, and other your disciples, please live long. Thank you very much, everyone. And
thank you so much, Geshe.
Thank you.
It was a wonderful teaching. Thank you. We'll see you at 10 a.m.
Okay, thank you. See you. Bye. Good night.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night. Good night.